program. Just give us a sense of what you're hearing from inside Iran, because we have heard from Iranian state TV. They have downplayed, as my colleague Alistair Bunkle was just saying, this attack. But, it's still dark in Iran, in the region, and we're waiting to get a better assessment of what's happened.
Right. So, this is really, again, another shock after a week of shock, because President Trump had just announced that he's going to wait another 2 weeks. And today, Secretary Rubio had said that the U.S. prefers to resolve this issue diplomatically. Iran met with the Europeans yesterday. So there was some hope raising for the potential of diplomacy and the U.S. thinking its potential entering. And then came this absolute shock. The few people I've been in touch with just in this very short time, it's also middle of the night in Tehran, it's just a continuation of the shock and the horror that started last week when the attacks initially started. People don't know which part of the country is safe. The war had been framed in the past week as a war on Iran's nuclear program, on military and nuclear targets only, but civilians saw with their own eyes and actually experienced that it wasn't only that civilian homes had been targeted, car bombs were going off on the street, people were trying to flee on the roads, some got attacked. And so the civilian toll has been something that wasn't expected, between 400 to 600, I'd heard. And reporting is also not very updated or accurate, and thousands injured and lots of people displaced in the country. So we're talking to people who are no longer in their homes, especially in big cities. A lot of people fled Tehran as far as they could after President Trump issued that evacuation order out of Tehran. And now the U.S. has entered war, and we don't know what the next step would be by the Iranians.
Yeah, and are they feeling like this could continue, or is there a sense that the United States has launched this attack, and Donald Trump has said that he is now looking for peace, but are Iranians no doubt nervous about what could come next?
Absolutely, because the government, the Islamic Republic, has promised and threatened that if the U.S. does attack them, well, first of all, they see the U.S. as indirectly involved in the war as a supporter of Israel, but they also said if the U.S. does attack them, they're going to attack the U.S. And we saw in 2020 when the U.S. assassinated their top general Soleimani, the Iranians did retaliate by attacking that U.S. Base in Iraq. So I think the most probable scenario, I don't want to predict by certainty, but the most probable scenario, if we look at their statements and threats, is that they're going to respond. And they don't have a lot of good options in front of them anyways. They feel like if they don't respond to every attack, that the attacks are going to continue and accelerate. And if they do attack and engage with the United States, obviously this is the world's biggest, mightiest, most powerful army. So nothing good is going to come out of this, and the population is just in shock and horror and terrified, not really knowing what to do. The airspace has been closed for a week. People are trying to flee the country, some via land borders, and it's just absolute mayhem and uncertainty. And internet was disconnected for a couple of days. Now it's back, so people are getting more news from their family and loved ones, but still it's unclear and uncertain, and brings back memories of the 1980s war with Iraq.
Yeah, certainly Iran hasn't seen anything like this since, as you say, the 1980s. There's also been a lot of talk this week of regime change. We've seen top commanders and officials from the Iranian government being taken out. Just give us a sense of the mood around that from Iranians, because we've seen protests over the years against the regime, but Iranians have they had mixed feelings about this sort of coming in this way and through a series of attacks?
Sure. So, the regime change, first of all, how is regime change going to happen? Through sporadic aerial strikes? That's not very clear, because when regime change did happen through regime change wars, but by the U.S. recently, Afghanistan and Iraq, it involves boots on the ground. And that's something that so far the U.S. said they're not interested in engaging. There's also no appetite for that in the U.S. But also looking at the results of these situations, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, there's fear of the uncertainty. People may be very, very unhappy and angry with the status quo, with the regime. They have political, economic, social grievances. But these freedom bombs, per se, that's coming from the sky are also falling on their homes, on their residences, have killed civilians. So I think people are more clear-eyed about the situation where they feel like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, a repressive internal domestic situation that doesn't address their grievances and problems and demands, and now a foreign entity that does not seem very interested in the fate of these civilians by targeting them, and also is just interested in destroying a nuclear program. So I think there's also a sense of confusion as what this exactly is. There's also Israeli messaging broadcast even from Iranian state TV when it was hacked, asking Iranians to rise up and take matters into their hand and end this regime. And how are people going to do that when they're under bombings and fleeing their homes and cities?
Negar, I'm just going to give a short update based on what NBC is reporting, and this is also based on multiple senior White House officials saying that they believe that President Trump, when he addresses the nation in about 20 minutes or time is when we're expecting it, that he will try and focus on the diplomacy around this as well. And he has said they believe, based on these White House officials, that he's not currently planning additional strikes inside Iran. These officials say President Trump hopes the strikes propel Iran back to negotiations as he presses its leaders to an agreement that will end this particular war. Negar, I just want to get your reaction to that, whether you think on the Iranian side, given what has happened, that they will see this as a moment where they have to be pragmatic and come to the negotiating table.
I mean, I don't know. They don't have a lot of good options in front of them. If they essentially surrender, which is something President Trump had asked over social media the past week, asking for unconditional surrender. I don't see that as far as the Iranian motto and their, rhetoric and also past actions, because the thinking in Tehran is that if they surrender, they're going to pay even a heavier price in the long term, that this is going to be the way they're going to be dealt with. At the same time, escalating this by attacking the U.S., because this was an escalation by the U.S., but Iran's response will escalate it even further, can also bring more fire and fury from this unpredictable president in the White House. And so honestly, there are no good options in front of them. I suspect that they will probably go with a response. Now, how that response is going to look like, it's unclear. They could close or disrupt oil shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. They could attack U.S. interests across the region, many of them in Arab countries, Iran's neighbors, which they have threatened before, or in any other shape or form, or they could still use what's remaining of their allies in the region of this axis of resistance, the Houthis or whatnot. But I just don't see that pragmatism really being echoed in Tehran.
Negar, we're grateful for your time. Thank you very much.